Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Tomb Raider holds a very special place in my heart. It was the first game I ever saw, as my parents used to play it when I was little. I remember most of these games through and through, but there was one in particular that was always my favorite of all of those great games. One that stood out for me, and I can almost say with certainty that this title is the reason why I have a deep love for horror games today, without even being a horror game at all. And that one is Tomb Raider 4, The Last Revelation. Tomb Raider 4 is a very special game to me. It's the first game I ever played and the first game I ever saw being played. That by side, today I'd like to take you on a tour of Tomb Raider 4 and how this game shaped my love of horror games without even being one, and probably gave me all of my current phobias that I have. It actually really starts as soon as you press start for the first time and... Wait, no, that's not right. It actually starts earlier than that, in the menu. I don't know about you, but this menu has always creeped me out. It's like a warning that whatever we're about to play is far more sinister than it might seem. Something about this is just wrong. It doesn't really fit any Tomb Raider theme that I know of so far. It sets the mood extremely well for something that is very different to the other ones, while still being on track with the overall game design. I think this is one of the best Tomb Raider menus ever made, and something about this is just perfect. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but I just wanted to mention it because it's important to me to include this in the overall atmosphere of the game. This was something that really shaped my vision of the game, and probably for most others, they remember this intro as well. It's just insanely catching and weird. But now, let's start the actual game.
And so, we breach the sanctum of the ancients, the first footfalls in this tomb for centuries.
This place gives me the creeps, after you.
From the moment we take full control of Lara, there is already something wrong here. There is no sound. Nothing to guide us through our first level, which feels very different to how other Tomb Raider games have started. It's not just that there is no music, there are no other sounds either. This place is completely empty for once. A theme that Tomb Raider 4 strives for much more than the other titles. At least in other Tomb Raider titles, as you started the game, at least then there was some sort of thing accompanying you, either it being the snow sounds of Tomb Raider 1, or the jungle atmosphere of Tomb Raider 3. Here, just silence. It's just nothing beside the own steps. And after completing the tutorial level and seeing Werner's demise, we are actually thrown into our first tomb. And I have to say, this is absolutely terrifying. This, as a actual first level, is a huge departure from actual Tomb Raider games. The music alone in the intro cinematic is eerie and unsettling. The level is extremely dark and you can barely see anything. The only thing keeping us from feeling truly alone is our guide. And speaking of the guide, let's talk about that for a moment, because this guide, in my opinion, has a much deeper purpose than just giving us a little light. In the tutorial level, we had Werner with us throughout. Now that the game has actually started, we still have another person with us. I think this shows that the true intentions of core design for Tomb Raider 4 were a little bit different than the other ones. In no other installment of the series have we had someone to keep us company. Not once. But now that has changed. The developers are actively trying to give you someone to keep you company in these early levels, as if they want you to not feel completely alone in this new direction the game is taking for the first time. And I think this shows that core design already knew that Tomb Raider 4 was going to be a little scarier maybe than the rest of the series. It gives you someone that at least helps you feel not completely alone in these dark chambers. And even with Werner, we had at least someone that showed us that we are not alone at the end. This is very interesting because this is a trendy trope that some horror games actually pull off very early in their gameplay. They do this to not completely isolate the player at the start, to give you someone to rely on that you can actually learn this game before being thrown into the darkness completely alone. And as soon as they take away the one person with you throughout the level, you really feel alone in something much darker than the previous installments. And to be fair, this cutscene was the real reason that I believe that they intended this at all. This cutscene scared me as a kid, and even now I think this really has a lot of creepy vibes. You cannot tell me that this is not a cutscene made to feel fear. Like, you could put this in any type of horror game and you would immediately feel dread. And especially because then after this, the game gets progressively harder as you venture further into the pyramid under the sand, into traps, and quite frankly, some of the most trap-filled levels this franchise has ever seen. I mean, Dungeon of Xi'an was hard, yes, and there were other, like, super hard levels in Tomb Raider 3, but at least you could rest in those levels and feel somewhat safe most of the time.
Shall summon the sun god Horus, for only the power of light will again.
The atmosphere of this entire level is pure dread. Something that I only mentioned very quickly by now is that Tomb Raider 4 is unusually dark. And yes, I know some other games also had this insane darkness, especially if you played the early PS versions, which in some places could literally just show complete darkness even though you're holding a flare, which is contributed to the game's engine, but that's exactly the point. Tomb Raider 4 has a new lighting engine. And this lighting engine is much more similar to what we have today, with controls over where to put the dark lights and much better influx of where the light actually comes from. Now, even with that, the developers of this game actively tried to make this level as dark as possibly can. However, let's take a quick departure from seeing the darkness all around us and let's just focus on what's actually happening in the background of it all. I want you to really focus on this because while Tomb Raider has always had an insanely good music score and other soundtracks, Tomb Raider 4 has a very unique style of atmosphere contributed by its music. The entire atmospheric soundtrack for Tomb Raider 4 is very, very creepy. I mean, here, like, look at this. The very bass heavy and very dark sounding atmosphere. It really fits the dark chambers lying under the sand, and while it fits absolutely to the surrounding place, this is plain creepy. Like, imagine this as a kid. I was playing this as a kid. I remember this soundtrack vividly in my mind. It really, really set the mood for me, and I think that the soundtrack and atmospheric soundtrack for Tomb Raider 4 is extremely overlooked in some places.
Shall summon the sun god Horus, for only the power of light will again.
This room right here is the whole point of me making this video. As soon as you enter here and see the open coffins, you know that something's gonna go wrong and you need to tap into this trap to proceed. But what comes after that was completely unexpected back then, at least for me. And that unexpected factor is why I have insane memories of this game. These mummies are a very strange enemy for Tomb Raider players, let's be real. We have fought mummies before in Tomb Raider 1. They were jumping and they were really hard to kill and mostly you died a lot to them. But these mummies are weird, different. Most likely you reacted like any other Tomb Raider player would and shot them. And you most likely would have thought, oh, those were pretty easy. Oh no, they just get up again. There have never been immortal enemies in Tomb Raider. Never. Everything has been able to be dispatched somehow. This is the first one where running away is the only option. Of course, talking about this now, these enemies are extremely easy and almost comically weak compared to others. Especially if you compare them to the Tomb Raider 1 version, which are also incredibly freaky. but I swear to you, when I was a kid, those things were damn scary. And I think what really scared me was the sounds they made and the weird way they walked. I really had no idea how mummies worked at the time, so seeing someone walk towards me extremely slow without being able to kill them definitely drove me paranoid at some places. I would even go as far to say that these mummies are the main reason for one of my phobias that I have developed. I'm not sure if it is a phobia at all, but let me explain what I mean. Ever since my first encounter with these mummies, I have suffered from being totally freaked out by things that are chasing me, which I cannot kill or avoid in any way. I have actually no idea where this comes from, but I'm pretty sure that these things are the main reason for this. This is because I was really bad at this game back in the day. We almost all were when we played this for the first time, unless you already were experienced, but I already said that this is my first game I ever played. And I almost shit my pants every time I had to climb or crouch when something was behind me. I still have that fear to this very day. So thank you Tomb Raider 4 Mummies for one of my personal phobias. And that's a theme that will go on throughout the game. I account many of my personal fears to this game, even though it's not even supposed to be a horror game. So, in order for you to understand, let me just list all my fears that I think I got from playing this game alone. Fear of being pursued by an immovable force. Fear of climbing with someone behind me. Fear of the dark. And the fear of being underwater with creatures nearby that I cannot see. This game shaped my personal taste for horror and horror games in general. I am 100% sure of this. Oh, and not only that, I think this game is also the main reason why Ancient Egypt is my favorite setting. So yeah, thank you so much Tomb Raider 4 for great taste, I guess. To me, Tomb Raider 4 always felt very different to other Tomb Raider games. No other Tomb Raider game unnerves me as much as Tomb Raider 4 does at times. Even though, you know, the last level of Siberia in Tomb Raider 3 kind of scared me a lot as well. Coming back to that maybe someday. But while I think this is mostly down to the game's overall creepy atmosphere, I think the Egyptian setting works perfectly with this as well. And while there are other creepy settings in the series before, looking at you, Tomb Raider 3, I think Tomb Raider and Egypt go hand in hand with that feeling that I'm talking about. You can actually see the developers toying with the idea of Egypt as early as Tomb Raider 1, and at some points it definitely has the same atmosphere as 4, but the overall feeling was not quite there yet. But you can definitely see that Egypt in the developers' eyes always was a little different than the others. In general, Tomb Raider 4 has a lot of scary elements in it. And in my personal opinion, it starts off a lot scarier than the other games in the series and maintains this scariness throughout, even until the midpoint of the game. However, Tomb Raider has always been a scary game in my opinion, and each game has its own personal touch to horror. Be it grotesque gore of Tomb Raider 1's Atlantis, the mythical flair that really made Tomb Raider 2 feel different, or the straight up Ping-inspired level in Tomb Raider 3, looking at you, that scared the shit out of me back then. There is a lot to talk about these games in general, and I really cannot do them all justice in one video. So if anyone is interested, I might go back and talk about another Tomb Raider title and how that one in particular created its own horror atmosphere within the series. And in the end, I thank you very much for joining me for another installment in this ongoing series. I hope you all enjoyed this one as much as you did the last one. I mean, look at those. Like, what the hell is that? That's insane, guys. I have no idea how this happened at all. I hope you will all join me for the next installment as well. Take care until then, and don't stumble into one of those sandy tombs. Those suck a lot.